Nobody wants problems. And that's the problem, is that you think you shouldn't have problems. My life was falling apart before my very eyes in multiple ways. In my business, in my health. My health was never worse. The dream became a nightmare.
You describe something really challenging, almost a battle, a lonely battle.
For me, it literally became life and death. If you want to change your life, in whatever it is, hating yourself into change will never work.
Welcome to my podcast. In this episode, I'm Caroline, your psychologist and host. Today, I'm in London, in England, and with Nikki Sharp. Nikki Sharp is so much. She is a transformative coach, former international model. She has 2 best-selling books. She's featured in Huffington Post, Forbes, Vogue, and she invited us to her home today to speak about something that is really close to my heart and very important, about her invisible wounds, about trauma, about her journey, her healing journey, and to share maybe impactful things, insights that can help you on your healing journey. Thank you so much, Nikki, for having us here today in London.
Of course, welcome. I'm so excited to host you in my beautiful home and to chat, because I think, well, I know that this is a topic and everything we'll talk about is so impactful for so many people, and I'm excited.
Thank you, Nikki.
Yeah.
I have to say, I listen to a lot of things. You have your own podcast that I forgot to mention, and I heard you speak so openly about your journey, about what you've been through, what you've faced, and healing is an ongoing journey, of course. But you spoke so deeply also about something interesting that maybe a lot of people in the audience can relate to, complex PTSD. Do you mind sharing how that showed up for you in your life and when you realized that this is something you're dealing with?
Yeah, so complex PTSD was something I did not know until about a year and a half ago. And the more that we learn within the field of psychology and neuroscience, we're talking about these things more. So growing up, I didn't know that I had a trauma. I didn't know even really what trauma was. And it was an interesting one because when I look back at my childhood, it's not like I've had these just like horrendous, horrific things. And I think this is really important for people to understand and know that you can have trauma and you can have complex PTSD from simple things that add up. And that was really what it was for me. My parents had their own marital challenges. And because of that, they were quite distant and avoidant with me.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't get the soothing and the nurturing that every child needs. Now, again, growing up, I didn't know that my childhood was different. I'm an only child. I was born in a different country to where my parents are originally from. So my extended family lives in England. I was born in America. And from there, a variety and various things continued to happen over my lifetime that it's sort of, in the way that I've looked at trauma, is each little thing kind of becomes this next little, like we're adding a rock into a backpack. And suddenly the backpack feels really, really heavy. And that's when I started to realize that the trauma was all these little rocks that have been placed in there. And then being in kind of survival mode, what felt like most of my life. But it's a double-edged sword because it's also what's driven me to be who I am and do what I do and go on the healing journey that I have. So I'm happy to get into it more, but I really just want to share for anyone listening, trauma and complex PTSD, for example, can really happen from just about anything. In my experience, like I went through a divorce in this last year. That was highly traumatic. I had very little nurturing or soothing. I had very little contact with my parents during this time, not by choice of me, but they were emotionally unavailable, unfortunately. And so that was a traumatic event that happened, which then led to the complex PTSD that continues. And so that's been the ongoing journey to work through. And my goal in sharing everything is to help people feel less guilty, to feel less shameful, because we all have some form of trauma or PTSD or something that happened that was just really hard to deal with. And we didn't have the tools or, again, that soothing and nurturing.
How did that show up in your daily life?
When I was a kid, starting from a very young age, I had challenges within my body. So physical ailments. I had stomach problems. Starting from 11, I had really chronic cystic acne on my butt, on my back, on my face. I was put at, I think at 11, 12, starting on really high doses of skincare, medications. I tried everything. By the time I got to high school, in middle school, so around 12, went to the doctor for stomach problems. They put me on the highest dose of an antacid that adults should be taking, not a 12-year-old.
Wow.
I went on the brat diet, which is the most simple, basic thing, because they were trying to figure out what's wrong with my body. I was hospitalized at 7. And then by the time I reached high school, very traumatic events that happened there, I had daily headaches, and they would always happen at a certain time. So I didn't know then, but now I realize, that's not normal for a 16-year-old to be taking paracetamol or Advil, 4 of them every single day for a year. It then went on, and I had insomnia for 7 years. I became addicted to Ambien, sleeping pills, and it then manifested in eating disorders. And so and also lower back pain. And something that I've learned throughout my journey with all of this, and I'm sure we can get into all the juicy sides of why these ailments happen within the body, because the emotional state in which we're experiencing, if we're unable to release that emotion, because what is emotion? It's energy in motion, it gets trapped in the body. And so starting from such a young age, I had all of these little things that are adding up, these little rocks going in the backpack that you just think are kind of isn't that normal? People get old and they're like, oh, my bones hurt, my back hurts. And so we normalize all of these things that are actually pretty traumatic, and we should be dealing with the issues at hand, not just treating the symptoms. And that was one of the biggest things that I've learned through my own healing journey, was that doctors, nutritionists, skincare experts, dermatologists, you name it, I have so much respect for all of them. I even went, you'll laugh at this, I went when I was 20, I think 22, I went in New York. I couldn't sleep for so long. And when people would be like, well, just go to sleep. I did CBT. I went to therapists. I finally went into a sleep study, an overnight sleep study, where they hooked up, and I'll have to show you the photo.
Or something.
And they hooked up a thing to my brain and all these electrodes, and to measure why could I not sleep. And talk about, you're in this weird environment with cameras on you. And when I came out of it the next day, they were like, oh, you're fine. You just need to stress less. And then the doctor gave me Ambien to go to sleep. And so while I have so much respect for everyone who goes into a field, because everyone wants to help, right? People become doctors because they want to help, nutritionists because you want to help. The challenge, and at least for me growing up, and I'm sure similar to you, is that I wasn't asked about what was going on in your family life, what was going on in your nervous system. And we also didn't know as much at that point.
No, that's true. Yeah.
So that's how these symptoms started showing up and manifesting in my body. And that, when I was going through the 2 eating disorders, that's when something hit me. And it was like, I need to do something about this, because a doctor gave me a prescription for an antidepressant. I took 1 pill and I was like, I'm not depressed. I'm a very happy, joyful, I'm light and bright. I always have been. Like, there's something there, and I need to figure out what it is.
Wow. Thanks for sharing, Nikki. When you said eating disorder, do you mind sharing what exactly was going on?
Yeah, of course. And I share, and I just want to point this out, Caroline, and for anyone listening or watching, I'm very open about my story, because I remember, and this was a key defining moment during the eating disorder period, which started when I was 19,
Mhm.
17, 18, 19. I did a exchange program in Colorado to Los Angeles. So that's really where it started, where the insomnia started and where my controlled eating started. Why? Because I was in such a different environment. I didn't have the support of my parents. It was all so unfamiliar that my mind needed some level of control.
Yeah.
And so it started for many, many years with anorexia and very controlled eating. I tried to do the whole counting calories. I sucked at it. Thank goodness I sucked at it. It was too much. It was too much. So I just didn't eat very much, and I lost a lot of weight. But I felt good about my body. I felt in control, and it then went to, I moved to Australia. Well, I graduated, I moved to Shanghai. So when I was back in Colorado, it would actually settle down because I was out in nature. I was with friends.
Mhm. You were
And
supported.
I was supported, not necessarily by my parents, but I still had some level of support, of connection. And when I then moved to China, Shanghai modeling right after I graduated university, early, skipped through high school, and we can get into that. China it became really restrictive because it was even more unfamiliar. And Facebook was banned in China at that time. So I had even less connection. We didn't have Zoom yet, so I had to do Skype calls or pick up an actual phone, a pay phone, like back in the day.
Yeah.
And then I came back to Colorado for a year, and the eating disorder went away. Then I moved to Australia, and this is where it then started to morph. I remember doing a detox program, and it was a healthy one, and it taught me so much about nutrition. But that's where the restriction of more so the almost orthorexia started, and it was still highly restrictive. And it was it was me. Like I was the problem in that I was the one controlling because the plan that was given to me was not nearly as restrictive as I made it. And at the end of the 6 weeks, I felt amazing. I had energy. I looked amazing. But the eating disorder once again got worse. What I then learned was I went to South Korea. And in South Korea, they told me, can you gain weight in certain places? Like your arm is too skinny here, but we don't want you to gain weight here. Your leg is too skinny here, but don't gain weight here.
Oh my
I
God.
walked out of the agency that day and I binged. I binged because I was like, well, I'm getting permission to eat. I then went to Thailand where they wanted me, Bangkok, they wanted me to gain weight. And we would get measured and weighed, literally my neck, my arms, every part of your body measured. And if you gained weight 2 weeks in a row, they would send you home. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to Thailand. They have great food. So now my fear of food, as well as I'm being told, so talk about belief system, I'm being told, be skinny from this industry, but don't gain too much weight. And you're getting compared to other women. Now, there's a lot that I could say to demonize the modeling industry, and it is a very, very unhealthy one. And it's also me. My eating disorder started before really I started modeling. Just about the same time when I was in LA. But the reason, and going back to what I first shared, was it got to the point where the more west that I went, the worse the eating disorder became.
Why is that?
Because of the self-pressure that I was putting on, because the more lonely I was feeling. So the more west I would go, the more lonely I felt.
Okay.
And as I then I moved to London, and that was super hard. Then I moved to New York, and every shop is a food shop or a convenience store. And I ended up coming back to London, and I went to an eating disorder clinic, and they told me, we have a 6-month waiting list.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry.
I was like, I don't have 6 months. Not because of the lack of food I was eating, but because of my mind. And so as I started getting into my health journey, and this is what I was referencing where I first was starting to share this answer, the reason I'm so open about this is because I remember a distinct moment where I'm in my kitchen in South Kensington, and I've just binged, and I feel like crap. And I literally said out loud, I'm like, I just want to know that Miranda Kerr and Giselle Bundchen, who are supermodels, who I looked up to, that they have a bad day, that they binge, that they drink too much, that they feel like shit. And I need to know that they have that too, so that I can feel okay, that I know there's hope. To this day, neither one of them have really come out and shared that. They've kept very private and they have their stories. But there was a little voice that went off inside my head that said, and it wasn't even like a conscious thing, but if you're ever known, I want to be the voice to give other people the hope that I didn't have. And I know that my account and my podcast and everything I do and teach and share, me being open, because I understand I'm a beautiful woman. I take care of myself. I have this amazing career that I've worked very hard for. It's very easy to look at me and say, wow, she has it all. It's easy for her.
Mm-hmm.
She has no problems, just as I did when I looked at Miranda Kerr and Giselle. And so I really want people to understand that whatever they're going through is normal. And we all have challenges, no matter what you look like, how you look. And it's taken me years to overcome the eating disorders, but more so the mindset behind it of why I had those and to work on the complex PTSD, which then really started those.
That's incredible. You shared something very important here, that the outside did not match your inside world. For someone who has maybe not been through an eating disorder and doesn't understand it, can you describe a little bit how your mind would speak to you, but also your body, on how would a day look like when, for example, maybe before you binge? I would be curious to hear that.
Great question. And the first part of the answer I'll give is that we all have an inner critic. So whether or not someone has had challenges with an actual eating disorder, which the percentage is quite small of diagnosed eating disorders. Like, I don't know if mine was actually ever diagnosed. I knew that I had a problem though. But it's disordered eating. I don't know a single person that hasn't looked in the mirror and said, I want something different in my body. Or for women, it's typically the last 5 pounds. I just need to lose 5 pounds. Or there's some sort of control about food, or don't eat the fats, right? Or whatever's trending on social media, eat this, don't eat that. And so I don't know anyone who doesn't have that we all do. We have that inner critic, which tells you you're not good enough, or you're not worthy, or you don't deserve this thing, or you're fat, or you're ugly, or you're this, or you're that. We all have it. And we've all had it at some point in our life. And at least from my point, that inner critic, it's what I call the Siamese twin. It's your ego mind, which we know is in the prefrontal cortex. And it typically gets triggered when your amygdala is going off, because now you're in a fight, flight, freeze response, and your body's going this. And then that inner critic is like, we got to protect you. But if you're in that protection mode, you're not sitting there to self being like, okay, you're wonderful, you're perfect. It's like, you got to get your life together in whatever that means. And so at least from my point of view and going through this, it was really about learning what this voice was, because I didn't know for many, many years what the voice was. I just knew that it was really mean. And it said how fat you look, even though I had terrible body dysmorphia. And that's actually how my Instagram account started. Was I started in 2012 because I wanted a place to keep track of my progress. And so I would post headless, right, faceless body shots of my body in my bra and underwear, like, going like this. And I was tiny. I was super skinny. And I would talk about how I felt, how fat I thought I was. And it's a distortion of the mind. And so, the binge and restrict episodes, what would happen is that you have this mind, this inner critic, which we all have, and it comes out differently. For some people, they drink. Other people, they take pharmaceuticals. Some people smoke marijuana. Other people, they over-exercise. Some people isolate themselves when they're feeling low, and then that voice cycles. Yeah. So we all have something. We all have something that happens. And mine would be the kind of self-sabotaging patterns of starve myself because I'm trying to look different, but then I'm not eating the correct food, so I'm not getting the nutrients that I need. So then that's kind of changing my brain chemistry and dopamine and all of these things. And then I'm so hungry that what's the first thing you reach for? Well, the thing that you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's once the dopamine, and I only know this now that I've studied so much, but once you eat that first bite, your brain is flooded with dopamine. And so my binge episodes were, you wouldn't believe how much food I ate. Like for how small I am, I ate and I ate and I ate. And then I would feel awful about myself, just awful. And then I would restrict for the next day and only have juices. But then once again, felt really crappy. And a big part of the binge and restrict episodes that were happening is because I was isolating myself. I was too scared to go out to dinner. I didn't want to admit to people what was going on. I would check a menu. I didn't have many friends. And so that inner critic is what was controlling my life. And it wasn't until I learned to name the dragon. So name it to tame it. It's what I call the Siamese twin. And I literally had a visual. And this is what I teach now. I have a visual of, I was like, I want to kill this voice, right? Do you ever have that voice?
Yeah.
That mean voice?
Yeah, I do, but I learned to tame it as well. Yeah.
And so, and the naming it to tame it is because we want to identify that it's not actually you. It's not you being horrible to yourself. So you want it, at least for me, it was name it something awful so that you can be like, oh, that POS, right? The disassociation.
Yeah.
Yes, the disassociation. So I remember in my mind, and I took a pen and I drew it, and I'll show it to you after we record this, actually. I was like, it's like this Siamese twin coming out of my neck where it's another head. And so I drew this, and I drew me, and then I named me, and I put all these, words and things like, who am I? I'm like a really happy girl, joyful. I like to take care of myself. I like exercising. I like socializing. And then this head that I drew out of my neck, like you can't just chop it off. It's a part of you. And I wrote all the things that she says to me. And from that moment on, I was able to start recognizing when it was her talking and when she was trying to self-sabotage and when it was me, and how to get back into alignment. And that's something that I teach now. And I think it's just so important for everyone to understand. We all have this voice. It does go away, but it goes away if you do the work, right? I say the work works if you do the work. But more importantly is to normalize it, that we all have this. We all have this mean voice.
But how, when you, let's say, could give an advice or say something helpful that helped you the most in this healing journey, in that part of your healing journey, what would you say to someone who's maybe sitting exactly in this moment, is binging, is picturing food maybe in a different way, or struggling or isolating
or alcohol or
in so many
anything.
ways? What would you say? What helped you the most?
The permission slip.
What is that?
The permission slip is giving yourself permission, because it takes away, and I'll tell you a quick story on this, because it was a defining, life-changing moment for me. The permission slip is giving yourself permission to do the thing that you're telling yourself that you can't, because it's not working. The more you tell yourself, don't do this, don't drink, don't isolate, well, now you're putting more judgment, more self-pressure. And what do we do when you say, like, New Year's comes and we all say, no more sweets, no more chocolate, no more, that's it, I'm giving this up.
The belt gets tighter.
It gets tighter.
Yeah.
And then what happens when you have that sweet? Now you feel bad about yourself. That's where this diet starts Monday, all or nothing, black or white mentality happens. So I was living in LA as about, I think, 2015, 2016. And I kept telling myself, don't binge. You're not going to binge. You're piece of S. Like, don't do it. All the mean voice. And I literally paused and I just said, I know I'm going to binge. So what if I just allowed myself to go get the thing that I want? And a light bulb, I call them aha moments, a light bulb moment went off. And I was like, okay, Nikki. And I had a conversation with myself. It was like my higher self had a conversation with this mean voice and was like, okay, so what do you want? What do you actually want? I'm giving you permission to go and binge. What do you want? And I was like, pizza. I want pizza. It's like, okay, great. So I gave myself absolute permission to eat whatever I wanted, as long as I got very clear on what it was and that permission, so the permission slip. And I went to the local kind of pizzeria and I got 3 huge slices and they looked amazing, took them home, put them in the oven one by one, put them on a plate, got a knife and fork, a napkin, lit some candles, poured a glass of wine, and I put a really nice movie on. Guess what happened? I ate the pizza very slowly, and it wasn't like I didn't know about meditation and all these things so much yet. But because I gave myself this permission slip, the pizza was enjoyable instead of it being this shove it as fast as you can. And the next day, I didn't feel as bad. I didn't feel as bloated. I didn't feel as guilty. And what I've now since learned is because when we're in that fight or flight response, or you're binging or drinking a lot or whatever it is, your nervous system, and I'd love to hear from you more the reasons behind on this, but your nervous system is activated, right? It's that fight or flight. And we know that your whole digestive and reproductive system shuts down when you're in fight or flight. So here I am binging when I'm already stressed out, which then shuts down my stomach. So you can't digest the actual food.
No.
It's why people, when they go to Italy, for example, and they're like, oh my God, I ate all the things, the pasta, the pizza, the wine. I didn't gain any weight, right? Because you were in the parasympathetic, you were in rest and digest.
Exactly.
You were in a place of joy.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was saying is the permission slip, giving myself permission to do that, completely shifted. And so I want to offer that to anyone listening or watching. It's hard, right? It's hard, but to give yourself permission to say, what if I allowed myself to do this thing? And what will happen if you truly lean into it is that it takes away the shame, the guilt, the self-judgment, the pressures that we have. It relaxes your nervous system. So now you're not in this fight or flight as much.
That's wonderful.
Completely life-changing. And I know this because I've worked with thousands of clients. And this, I actually just posted yesterday on stories. I have a client who joined my program, the Ultimate Transformation Program. And from this one exercise, and she's come on, given testimonials, and I shared it yesterday. She said this one exercise healed her of a 30-year eating disorder.
Wow.
So it's powerful.
That's incredible. That's really incredible. And you made this your purpose and mission to share this with the people around the globe who struggle with that. Thank you so much, Nikki, for sharing that. I hope this helps a lot of people who are struggling maybe with an eating disorder at this moment in time. Try to be more compassionate. I hear that also. It's almost an element of a parent that inside of you shares. I give you the permission. You're clear on what you would want and what would you like, and I give you the permission because you asked for it, and with more kindness involved.
Kindness and compassion.
That's wonderful.
So what I wanted to share really quickly on that, and with the compassion piece, is, as I was mentioning, that we all have this inner critic, this inner voice, the Siamese twin, the one that's a little bit loud. Then we're giving ourselves this permission slip. Now, where the compassion piece ties in, and this was something that took me many, many years to learn, but I'm very grateful that I did. And I always lead my call number 1, or UTP, this program, say, hating yourself into change will never work.
No.
The only way to see, so essentially is, if you want to change your life in whatever it is, whether you want to become more fit, you have a health goal, a health resolution, you want to get out of a toxic relationship, which we can go into, you want to change your mindset, you want to get rid of this inner critic, whatever the goal is, You cannot hate yourself into change. And that's where that inner critic is going to come in and say, yes, but of course, I'm going to hate you. I'm going to tell you all that's wrong with you. And the compassion piece comes in. I say the only way to change and have lasting change is to have compassion, to meet yourself where you are, and to start to love yourself even if you don't like yourself right now.
That is powerful. Wow. Thank you, Nikki, for sharing that. You mentioned toxic relationship. Again, from the outside, you live a life like a public life. Like you're in magazines, you've done so many things, you have achieved so much. But there's also obviously an inside you. And I saw, and if people Google this, they will see under your name a beautiful wedding,
Beautiful.
multiple beautiful dressings. It's like the dream wedding,
It really
the
was.
dream husband. It looked
Yeah.
picture perfect. It was a moment that touched me, but I also came up for me, oh, is it too good to be true? And that's my question to you, Nikki. Was it too good to be true? Is there, and that's the emotional invisible wounds. Can you share a little bit more about those?
Great question. It was entirely the dream wedding. I planned it. I have no regrets about it. I loved every moment of it. I wish I was less overwhelmed. I now know what I know now, didn't then. Most beautiful gown. I got to collaborate with different people. I mean, so many aspects, friends and family, and it was post-COVID, so we all got to travel. It was a 3-day event in Capri, and fun fact, I'd never been to a wedding before. My wedding was the first wedding I ever attended.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I had no reference point on what's a good wedding. So I just planned. I love planning events, and I'm a very good curator. Whether it's music, I planned different playlists. We did a hike for everyone to get to know each other. And I really just planned something that I was like, what would I like to attend? And people walked away and they were like, that is, I've been to a lot of weddings. That was the best wedding I've ever been to. I'm like, great. It didn't kind of feed my ego. It was just like, awesome. I'm so glad that you enjoyed yourself. That being said, it was entirely the dream wedding, and my entire kind of meeting my ex and getting engaged very quickly and planning this wedding, it was very dreamy. It was exactly what I wanted. I am a master manifester. I manifested exactly what I wanted. I got it all. But what I didn't know until afterwards, and this is why I have no regrets on it, is that I was attracting a certain type of person based on childhood wounds, based on my parents, based on what I grew up with.
So you manifested that based on your childhood wounds?
Based on my childhood. Yeah, my wounds. And I know that we have similar things in that and what we talk about on our social media accounts of how we manifest or how we call in, because the nervous system in the brain goes to what's familiar.
Exactly.
But I didn't know this going into my marriage. And I also didn't know that people kind of can change so quickly. And so there were a lot of red flags and warning signs, and I'm very open about it. I never throw my ex under the bus. I like to lead with integrity. I'm also ready to share my story a little bit more, that there were many red flags that I ignored. And I think that's a key piece to understand is I saw them. I was aware of them, but I ignored them and I justified them.
How did you ignore them? Is there also, again, the inner voice or something that told you something?
I ignored them by drinking alcohol. Like my nervous system started shutting down. I wasn't sleeping as well. Like I was wearing the Aura ring and I literally had to take it off because it was telling me my HRV was so low every day. And it was like everything was in like the red. I'm like, that's not normal. But I didn't yet know as much as I know now about the nervous system. And my nervous system was literally shutting down. And we know that if your nervous system is shut down, your digestive system, your reproductive system. So leading up to the actual wedding, I gave the ring back. I gave the ring back 1 month or 2 months before the wedding. And I said, we can't do this. I can't marry you. You're not marrying me for me, Nikki. You're marrying me for a version that you're wanting and hoping me to become. And
Mm.
I may or may not, but that's not fair to you or I.
That's the potential in you that he fell in love with.
Yes, he fell in love
Mhm.
with the shiny star, just as you mentioned my career and all these things and this beautiful woman who's done a lot. Now, I'm
Mhm.
sure there were aspects that he also, like there were moments, 100%, that were real, and we did love each other. But I don't think that he fell in love and married me, for all my flaws, for all the things that I've been through, because and well, I'll come to that. I gave the ring back, and what I've since learned is there are different stages within toxic relationships. And we went from sort of the devalue stage into, and I forget the name, but it's the back to the love bombing or the trying to make things better stage. So he's like, no, 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 of course we're going to do this. And so we went through with it. And as I say, no regrets. If I could do it all over again, as painful as it's been, I
Mhm.
would, because of what I've learned. And I got the dream wedding. It really was magical. But then the dream became a nightmare pretty much right after we got married, like literally the next day.
How did that look like?
Got mad at me for anything and everything that I did. And it was all very behind the scenes. So when you looked at it and the photos, everything was beautiful and perfect. And I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know why my body was shutting down.
Mhm.
I didn't understand why he was so mad. And we got back from our mini moon. We did a honeymoon later. And I straight up asked him, what did I do wrong? And this is a question that, and we were talking about this off camera, of when you have a certain childhood and you feel like your parents don't like you, or you grow up with some sort of traumatic, right? Whether a mother or father shuts down or is overly angry,
Mhm.
we start to wonder as kids, what did I do wrong? But that's what I'm asking. What did I do wrong? And I said that. What did I do wrong? Why are you so angry at me? And his exact words were, you didn't perform well enough at the wedding.
What?
Yeah. Imagine my reaction. I just had the wedding of my dreams, marrying my dream man and being told that. And that's when the real alarm bells started going off. And it was like, and I can track it back, like even before that thing started unraveling. But that was the moment where I was like, okay, we got to do something about this. We started therapy, and then the shutdowns started happening.
How did that look like? Shut
The
down?
shutdowns were him not talking to me. Imagine being in a room and we were like, two ships passing in the night, that phrase of he was so angry and I could feel it because this is what I grew up with in my childhood. And it was just the most basic, like, how's your day? Good. Okay. And then you just leave, walk away. And
Oh.
days on days. And our therapist had said, this is not okay. You can't do this. This is not for a healthy relationship. And this is killing Nikki's body. It is physically shutting my body down because I'm so
Mhm.
highly sensitive. I'm hypervigilant. I'm all of these things. Why from childhood? And which has been that double-edged sword again, that it's gotten me to where I am with this career and all of that. But behind the scenes and all these beautiful photos and going to the Maldives for the honeymoon and all of this, my life was falling apart before my very eyes in multiple ways, in my business, in my health. My health was never worse. And it finally got to a point where 1 year into marriage, actually even 6 months into it, but really 1 year, I said to my therapist, we got back from a month-long trip here in Europe, and I was like, we have to do a separation. And I wanted to essentially kill the relationship that we had in order to phoenix, rising from the ashes, to
Yeah.
rebuild it, to come together, to build a foundation. And when I asked for a separation, things unraveled very, very quickly. And I realized that it was not going to work. And it was better to get out earlier and sooner for my own, like literally for my own health. And what came after that was, a year long of, because I asked for a separation in September 2023. The next year and a half has been the most challenging, scary time of my life. And I'm so grateful because of everything that I've learned and patterns and understanding why I was attracting certain types of people and how it related back to childhood, and now calming my nervous system. So I learned everything that I did through the hardest times. And I like the saying of diamonds are created from immense pressure.
Yeah.
And I can say, I feel like the diamond in the rough where I'm like, ooh, the pressure's been a lot, but I feel like I'm shining brighter than ever now.
Wow.
Didn't come without challenges, but again, diamonds are created in pressure. And the thing is, nobody wants problems. And that's the problem, is that you think you shouldn't have problems. But if you allow yourself to admit that there's a problem, that's where we can start to have more awareness and forgiveness and compassion, and then find solutions for it.
Wow. That's helpful. You described something really challenging from the inside, almost a battle, a lonely battle, because a lot of people, maybe the audience can relate, are stuck in, however we want to call it, toxic, unhealthy dynamics, relationships. And you described now the silent treatment, a form of emotional abuse that no one sees, that often goes hand in hand with gaslighting, punishing you, dismissing you in so many ways that creates maybe the self doubt, that constant questioning yourself, that wears you down, that lowers your self esteem, that creates anxiety, depression, sleepless nights, just to name a few things. But that's a lot of times already when we're still in the relationship, right? I mean, that's the battle that we fight within ourselves already, and maybe with the other person. But you described then I decided to leave. And then the year and a half after that point were actually more horrifying and exhausting.
Yeah.
What would you advise someone who is maybe right now in a very challenging situation where they feel like, should they get out? Can they get out? Do they have the energy to go into the aftermath of it?
Yeah. So powerful what you just said. And I get very frustrated when people say, why don't you just leave a relationship if it's that bad?
Yeah.
Well, because you don't know that it's that bad when you're in it, and you don't want to leave. You love the person and there's a familiarity to it. And just as you mentioned, you might not have the energy. You might not have the time or the money, or you're fighting and you're working multiple jobs or whatever it is. For me, it literally became life and death. And that's what I say. And I don't mean that he was not physically abusive. There was definitely the emotional abuse. But when I say life and death, I'm saying that about me. My body was shutting down and I made it. It's what I call burning the bridge. There was no other choice.
Wow.
There was no other choice. I was not staying in a relationship whereas that unhappy, spending that much money on therapy, not seeing changes, being gaslit, being told how bad I am in all of these things, questioning myself. I'm exhausted all the time. My health is declining. It's like, this is not what I signed up for. And that's where, and this is the piece of advice that I'm going to give to everyone, is there has to be some level of bravery and courage that you step into. Because it is far easier to stay in a toxic or an unhealthy relationship. But here is the thing that I want people to remember is people treat you the way you're treating yourself. So if you're staying in an unhealthy, toxic relationship, I want you to think about that inner voice. What's the relationship with yourself?
Toxic?
Yeah, toxic. And that's what I had learned from a previous relationship. I was like, I was in this relationship, not my marriage, one before that, because the voice in my head, I was so scared. I was so angry. I was so all these things. And then with my marriage, so much shifted for me. And I thought I was showing up really like in the best light possible. And I learned so many things about nonviolent communication and all of this. But it really goes back to, what do you think that you deserve? Because do you think that you deserve whatever this treatment is? And I also want people to take accountability. Like I had to take accountability in the beginning of my relationship. When I was angry, I would slam a door, right? I'm so frustrated, so angry, I'd slam a door and then my nervous system would calm down. Well, that's not healthy either. That doesn't make me or him feel better. That doesn't bring us closer. And so we want to take accountability in our own life. That's where you gain back your power. Literally.
I love that one.
You gain back your power when you take accountability. Most people don't want to take accountability because it's easier to blame someone else. It's easier to be a victim and say, well, all of this is happening to me. But that's what keeps us stuck in the same patterns and the same types of relationships. And so it takes bravery and courage to look at where you are and what you think you deserve.
What would be two takeaways from the last year and a half for someone who is maybe in a similar situation, in a dynamic they want to step out of, cannot, or they're already exhausted? What helped you in this time to maybe come to a better place, to the now where you are today?
What I will say is, well, first off, it hasn't been a year and a half. It's been a year and a half since I asked for the separation. My divorce went actually very quickly, but everything became so dizzying fast that I asked for the separation. 3 weeks later, decided to get divorced, hired a divorce lawyer, moved out of my place, put my stuff in storage by December. And by January, I was back in Miami, packing, sorting, moving to London. And February 9th, my divorce was finalized. That's very abnormal.
Wow. Okay.
Very abnormal. So it all happened so quickly. I don't necessarily recommend that, but I also have friends who have been in divorces and breakups that last years. I don't advise that either. So in terms of the kind of healing process, I would say that it started when I asked for the separation, because now I'm sitting there looking at what's my role in this and then the divorce. But then I was in survival mode. So it wasn't until I moved to London on February 7th when I arrived here that I was able to really dive into the inner work. And that's where this past year, and it hasn't even been a full year yet, it's been the toughest year. But it's also been a really beautiful year. And so what I would say to someone who maybe has just left a relationship or is on that precipice of I'm about to, and it could be with another person or of just breaking the toxic relationship with yourself. As I mentioned before, it's about bravery and courage. It's also about having a compelling future. And this is a really key piece that people get lost in, or we lose sight of it when we're in that trauma response.
Yeah.
You have to have a compelling future that keeps you going day after day. So for me, when I was going through my separation and then the divorce, my compelling future was, okay, I'm moving to London. I'm literally up. I mean, it was hard because we know that death, divorce, and moving are the 3 hardest things in life. And research has shown that over. I went through 2 of those essentially at the same time. And also the death of a relationship, death of relationships within myself.
The future of anything.
But I had a compelling future of I'm moving to London for this new life that I'm so excited about. And that's what kept me going day after day. During this past year, the compelling future started to diminish. And that's where things got tricky and hard for me, is now I'm in a place where I feel more safe and I feel good. Now the ego death is happening and just questioning all different sides of myself and my business. And is this what I really want? Who am I? What do I want? And so the advice that I would give to someone is that there will be many moments post-breakup, post-divorce, whether it's with a friend, whether it's a colleague, whether you're quitting a job, moving, there's a divorce, there's a death. I mean, any type of death of a relationship, you will question things about yourself. And that's actually a good thing because we're so scared of change, yet we all want change because change is what happens next. Change is when your new partner comes in. Change is when you get a new job. Change is when the sun rises in London when it's been cloudy, right? So we all want change, but we're scared of change because we want certainty.
Yeah.
And so really the advice is knowing that there is going to be change. You have to let go of the need of certainty, which is control. And there has to be a compelling future for the days that you're terrified about. And it's been a journey for me, and I'm still going through it, but each and every day feels like I've been coming out of this tunnel a little bit more and a little bit more, and getting to share my story and help other people and help them on their journeys. That's what continues my own hope in those darker days.
Sounds like you're describing a purpose, creating a purpose for yourself that brings you maybe closer to your authentic self.
Yeah, spot on. And so many people get their purpose mixed up with their identity in a career. Now I get to teach what I learn and what I've gone through for a living. And there is a differentiation between Nikki, who you see online. Like, we're going deep today. People are getting to see a different side of me than they even do on my own podcast. But I also have my private life, right? So there's a differentiation. And I say this just because I share as much as I can that I think will help people, but I'm still going through things behind the scenes. I'm still dealing with stuff. And then once I learn the lessons, I then try to share as much as I can. But people are so quick to compare. And the reason that I bring that up is because then we put our purpose as our identity and our identity as our job. And my purpose is not my job, because my career has shifted and morphed, and I've started new things and I've failed at other things. But my purpose that I've learned is to be of service, to help other people go through challenging moments where I might have a piece of advice. My purpose is to make you feel less alone. My purpose is to be a mentor, to be a friend, to be a guide. And that's what it excites me every single day, even on the days where I don't feel so good.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. And that's actually really, and I have to use that word, raw and authentic. You describe something that there's still, no matter what people see, and that can happen so easily in social media, in this life, people see a lot, judge a lot, and read into things a lot, and they're still human. There's still you behind you.
Yeah.
Do you feel now closer to yourself?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's nothing like going through a divorce publicly and getting shredded by online trolls at the lowest moment of my life publicly, and definitely some personal things thrown in there. And it really made me question, again, everything about myself. But I remember seeing this and seeing the threads and the comments. And then I'm like, why am I checking this? These people don't know me. I'm just going to keep going forward. Literally one step in front of the other. And that's the last little piece that I wanted to add, actually, is there have been so many days over the past year where it wasn't even a get through this day. It was a just put one foot in front of the other to get into the shower today, Nikki.
Wow.
Just get into the shower. And then getting out of the shower is like, okay, just sit on the floor. It's okay. And I talk to myself often. And
I love that. Self-talk? Is it self-talk? I love that one.
And I say baby girl. And that's to the inner child, which I didn't realize in the moment. But that's where my higher self comes in those low moments and is like, baby girl, you got this. Put a face mask on. That makes you feel good. So I'm an advocate of being real and raw and authentic. I call them the magic pills: vulnerability, authenticity. That is literally what will transform your life when you can celebrate and integrate authenticity, vulnerability, because that then gives you integrity. But for me, it's been like sharing those days and to say, yes, I've been in a deep, dark hole, and I went through depression this summer and it sucked. And I sat with it and I sat in that darkness. And then there was a light. It was far away. But then the light I saw the next day and the next day. And suddenly I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm kind of coming out of this tunnel. And then the light became me more and more, and the darkness started to leave. So I had to sit in the darkness to illuminate it to the light. And so, yes, I feel more integrated, more in line with myself, more excited about life. Does that mean that everything's perfect? No. But I'm able to recognize that there are challenges and problems we all have and go through. And as we were talking about off camera, it's the layers and layers that keep coming.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
Wow. You mentioned dark place. I think a lot of people, it's also a bit the time of the year, of course, but a lot of people sit in that dark place alone, and you mentioned light. What can people look for? What would be lights? What would you describe a light for that people can maybe look for in this dark moment?
You're asking such beautiful questions. The thing that helped me the most, and I'm going to offer this to people, to write a joy list. So just like I said, give yourself a permission slip. Write down on a piece of paper all of the things that give you joy, even if right now you're not doing them.
Mm-hmm.
What are the things you like doing as a kid? What are the things that make you smile? Like I know taking a bubble bath with magnesium and a good book and a glass of red wine, it makes me so happy. I know that going out in nature, listening to music, cooking. Now, I know that it also, if I'm in a really stressed out place, cooking doesn't feel as joyful because now I have to cook and prep and clean. So writing a list of things that bring you joy, it's what I call the self-love list. So when you're in these deep, dark moments, which we all go to, and that voice is saying all these mean things, and you're like, there's no way forward, and I don't know what to do. Literally, physically looking at this list and being like, okay, I know that a soul cycle class or a spin cycle class makes me feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Connecting to a friend, listening to a podcast. And one of the biggest things for me, and I must mention this, in some of my darkest days, years ago, when I was publishing my books and I was so hyper stressed out and I thought things were challenging then, they only got worse later, but I see why. But one of the key pieces that has helped me from one of these defining moments was the more stressed out I am, the more of service I can be to someone else, the quicker it gets me out of my own stress.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that look like? Reaching out to a friend and saying, hi, how are you?
Connecting.
Or it could literally be calling someone and saying, hey, I just need to vent today. Are you available? So asking and receiving help, being of service, it's the quickest way, and research has shown this, being of service is the quickest way to get us out of our own suffering.
Yeah.
So that's on my self-love list, but it's really writing down what brings me joy, what makes me feel good, and then having that on your fridge. And this is what I used to do in these dark days. And even in my divorce,
Mm-hmm.
be like, Nikki, go take a shower, put a face mask on, sit with your kitties, and watch a movie. Those were on my self-love list. And guess what? Now I'm giving myself permission, tying in all these things, which shuts down that judging voice and allows me to calm my nervous system. So then I gain back my power and I'm able to move forward. So I'd like to offer that. And really, it does work. As I said, the work works if you do the work. It's all great if you listen to this podcast. It's another thing if you actually go and write these lists down or give yourself the permission slip and literally write down, where do I need to give myself permission? And then where the integration happens and the change that everyone wants is when you practice and do the thing.
Consistency is key, I hear. Wow, thank you, Nikki. That's so powerful. And I hope the things that you shared will help you too. And if you're in that dark moment, use that wonderful list to write it down. There is the power of journaling, visualizing things. You had it on your fridge. It's beautiful. There's one question that I'm going to ask everyone who is on my podcast. If you could travel back in time, could be anywhere in your past life at any time, young or even yesterday, where would you go and what would you tell yourself? A piece of advice from you today into the past. What would you say?
I would, oh my gosh, there's so many different times. I would probably go back to, at some point, there's two different moments that are kind of popping up. During my eating disorders, in those dark days, I would tell myself, everything you're going through now, not only will be okay and you'll heal, but you'll be helping other people with it. So you're going through it for a purpose.
That's wonderful.
And I would also, interestingly enough, at the very beginning of my divorce, again, go back to myself and say, it's going to be painful. It's going to be rough. It's going to suck. But you're going to come out the best version of yourself you've ever experienced. So just stick with it.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Nikki, is there anything that you would like to give as a small takeaway for the audience for people who are on their healing journey, who listen to this maybe the first time, who maybe resonate and can connect with you, thinking, wow, I've been through the same. What would you like to say?
I mean, I think I've shared a lot and a lot of key takeaways and practical items. And what I want to, I think, remind people of, and I said this earlier, is you cannot hate yourself into change. You can only love yourself into a life that you want. And when I say that, it means, can you love yourself even if you don't like parts of yourself? Can you be a little bit more compassionate in the places where you're beating yourself up and that voice is talking crap to you? Because the thing that we've all experienced, which is the anger, the self-hatred, it hasn't worked, has it? So why not try something new? And I'm living, breathing proof about the change is possible. And people look at my life and I get it. We've talked about this. I've had all these amazing successes, but I've worked very hard on myself, on the inner work to get there, to get to this place. And it's possible for anyone. And the second piece on that is not to compare yourself and your journey or your suffering or your challenges to anyone else, because we're all going through something.
That is so helpful. Thank you, Nikki, so much for being on this, I feel, impactful podcast episode and sharing so raw, real, and authentic with me, with us, your journey, your takeaways. And well, I really hope it helps so many people. I'm amazed. This was a wonderful episode. Everyone, I hope that you can take things for your own healing journey. And if you want, please go to Nikki's website. Nikki, you have a website and you have also books out there.
Yes.
You have your own podcast. You will find in the comments also where to find Nikki. We would love to hear also how you experienced this episode. What were maybe your takeaways from our conversation today? How it made you feel, things that you're gonna try. Don't forget to subscribe also to my podcast for more healing, to allow you, me and us and everyone who is on my show to be part of your healing journey. Thank you so much. This is it for today. Take good care and see you next time.